Picture this. You turn on the History Channel,
and over 4,700 military personnel.
A man with hair that looks like it was styled by a lightning bolt is staring into the camera, dead serious, explaining that aliens built the pyramids. Cut to a pawn shop in Las Vegas where a guy in an Ed Hardy shirt is trying to sell a Civil War sword for $20,000 and walks away with $400. Cut to two men in a swamp arguing about an alligator. Cut to a guy driving a truck on ice. Cut to another guy driving a truck on ice. Cut to a third guy also driving a truck, also on ice. Nobody asked for this, and yet here we are. This is the story of how one of the most trusted brands in American television decided that trust was actually the problem. How a channel built on education, credibility, and genuine purpose looked at all of that and said, you know what would be better? Pawn shops. This is the story of the people who made that call, the moment everything changed, and why the channel that killed history never really recovered, even when the ratings said otherwise. January 1st, 1995, New Year's Day. Most of America is horizontal. A&E Networks launches a cable channel with a mission statement so sincere it almost reads like satire in hindsight. The goal, as stated by the channel's own historical consultant, was to raise awareness about the vitality of history.
Hide the massive amounts of dirt being removed in the course of their digging operations.
Promote history education and encourage the preservation of historic archives and sites. They meant it. Every word. The man behind the channel was Nicholas DeVotzes, CEO of A&E Networks, a genuine believer in the idea that television could make people smarter. The very first show ever aired on the History Channel was Modern Marvels, an episode about the Transcontinental Railroad. Not a competition, not a survival show, a documentary about a railroad, because that was the point. They ran a dedicated school program every single morning. They gave away broadcast rights for free so teachers could tape episodes and show them in classrooms. They sent study guides to schools across the country.
It would warp your mind with that kind of performance.
These people were not making entertainment. They were running a museum that you could watch from your couch for free in your underwear. Within a few years, the channel had earned a nickname that perfectly captured what it was. People called it the Hitler Channel. Not an insult, just a description. The channel aired up to 40 hours of World War II programming every single week. Sometimes 12 hours in a single day. Historians loved it. Veterans loved it. A very specific type of dad in a very specific type of recliner with a very specific bag of pretzels absolutely loved it. It was not flashy. It was not viral.
Perhaps our enemies that we in fact were alien technologies.
But it was exactly what it said it was. And for over a decade, that was enough. Then January 2007 arrived, and with it, a woman who had actually worked at the channel before, who knew exactly what it was, what it stood for, and what its audience expected. She looked at all of that. She understood it completely. And then she decided none of it mattered anymore. Her name was Nancy DeBuck, 38 years old, sharp, ambitious, and no stranger to the History Channel. She had actually worked there as a programming supervisor back in 1999 before climbing the ranks at A&E. Now she was back, and this time she was in charge. In her first month on the job, she went through every single show the channel had ever aired and looked for one thing only: what spiked the ratings. The answer was a single episode of Modern Marvels about truck drivers navigating frozen lakes in Canada. She picked up the phone, called producer Tom Beers, and told him she wanted to turn it into a full series. Her justification was delivered with a completely straight face. These drivers, she argued, still represent the spirit of the frontiersmen that created this country. They are just as much history as watching black and white footage from decades ago. Sure, Nancy, the man white-knuckling a steering wheel at -40 is basically Lewis and Clark. Totally the same energy. But here's the infuriating part. It worked. Ice Road Truckers premiered on June 17, 2007, and drew 3.4 million viewers.
On the slick trail to Brochet.
The highest rated original series in the channel's history. By the season finale that August, the number had climbed to 4.8 million. DeBuck had been on the job for 7 months and had already broken every record the channel had ever set. So the channel learned exactly the wrong lesson from this. Axemen followed in 2008, then Pawn Stars in 2009, then American Pickers in 2010. The channel rolled out a brand new slogan to justify the pivot: history made every day.
Or they're able to travel through what I've always believed, wormholes.
A slogan so deliberately vague it could justify airing literally anything. A man eating a sandwich? History. A dog chasing its own tail? History. Two strangers haggling over a rusty rifle in a Las Vegas pawn shop? Basically the Gettysburg Address. The original audience noticed immediately. They complained loudly. They wrote letters. They canceled their cable packages. And the channel looked at the ratings going up, looked at the letters coming in, and made a very deliberate choice. It chose the ratings every single time. Because at the end of the day, a strongly worded letter from a history teacher does not pay for a second season of Swamp People. July 19th, 2009, Pawn Stars premieres. And from that night forward, the History Channel is a completely different animal.
These nipples have been replaced. These have obviously not been fired. They'd be worn down.
Within months, it is the biggest show on the network. By January 2011, it peaks at 7 million viewers for a single episode, the most watched telecast in the channel's entire history. That same year, History climbs to 5th place among all cable networks, posting a 21% year-over-year increase, the only top 5 cable network that is actually growing. Bloomberg calls Dubuck the show picker with the hottest hand in cable television. Fortune puts her on the list of 50 most powerful women in business. The channel that once sent lesson plans to 4th graders is now the #1 destination for men who want to watch strangers argue about the value of old junk. And the boardroom has never been happier. But while the executives are busy congratulating themselves, something else quietly crawls onto the schedule. In 2010, Ancient Aliens premieres, and this is the moment the History Channel stops being a cautionary tale and becomes a punchline. The premise is elegant in its stupidity. Every single thing that ever happened in human history was caused by aliens. The pyramids? Aliens. The Mayans? Aliens. Da Vinci, Tesla, Einstein, all getting tips from extraterrestrials. Your car that will not start on a cold morning? Honestly, probably aliens.
Years, and the idea was that we would expand our intellectual knowledge so our brains would get bigger.
That same year, a professor at the University of Wisconsin named Jeremy Stoddard published an academic paper about what he called the History Channel effect. His conclusion was that viewers who watch too much History Channel programming gradually lose the ability to distinguish real historical information from fiction. They start treating everything they see on a non-fiction network as objective fact, even when it is, in his words, extremely inaccurate due to little or no historical oversight. A university professor had to write an academic paper warning people that watching the History Channel was making them worse at understanding history. Let that sink in for a moment. The Smithsonian Magazine called Ancient Aliens some of the most noxious sludge in television's bottomless chum bucket. Forbes wrote that the channel simply should not be running this ancient astronaut nonsense. And Senator Chuck Grassley, an actual sitting United States senator with actual things to do, went on record criticizing the channel by name for abandoning educational programming. When a senator has to pause his actual job to tell your TV channel that it has lost the plot, you have lost the plot. Ancient Aliens is currently in its 19th season.
I'm gonna make it now. That's what's happening.
Giorgio Tsoukalos is a global meme, and the History Channel airs it in prime time like it is the most normal thing in the world. Because at this point, for them, it genuinely is. At this point, you might be thinking, okay, the channel drifted, it chased ratings, it made some questionable programming decisions. That happens. Networks evolve. Fair enough, but here is where the History Channel stops being a story about compromise and starts being a story about something much more embarrassing. Because the scandals were not just about what the channel chose to air, some of them were about what the channel chose to lie about. Here is something that does not get talked about enough. The History Channel was causing embarrassing scandals long before Nancy DeBeek arrived. Back in 2003, the channel aired an episode of a documentary series called The Men Who Killed Kennedy, and in that episode, they flat out accused former President Lyndon B. Johnson of orchestrating the assassination of JFK. Not implied it, not suggested it, stated it on television, on a channel people trusted to tell them the truth. The response was immediate. Lady Bird Johnson, LBJ's widow, wrote a formal letter of protest. Former presidents Jimmy Carter and Gerald Ford both wrote to A&E's parent companies demanding action. Gerald Ford called it the most damaging accusations ever made against a former vice president and president in American history. The History Channel was forced to pull the episode and issue a public apology. and then they just kept going. By 2011, the channel has a ratings empire and a reputation that is actively on fire, and they do something that manages to embarrass even themselves.
For that, but it's doable, and we know that this isn't a theory, this is real physics.
They commission a prestige miniseries called The Kennedys. Big budget, all-star cast, Greg Kinnear as JFK, Katie Holmes as Jackie, one of the most significant political families in American history. On paper, a triumphant return to serious television. It goes about as well as you would expect. Historians immediately flag the series as so dramatically exaggerated and factually distorted that it barely qualifies as historical fiction, let alone historical television. The backlash is so loud and so fast that the History Channel pulls the entire show before it even airs and quietly hands it off to another network like a gift nobody wanted. The official statement from the channel was, with a completely straight face, that the miniseries was simply not a fit for the History brand. Read that again. The History Channel, a channel literally named after history, attempted to make a show about history, got destroyed by actual historians, and had to give the show away in shame. It had been so long since anyone there had made serious content that they had apparently forgotten what serious content looked like. They had been playing pretend for so long that the real thing no longer fit. And then South Park twisted the knife. In November 2011, they aired an episode called A History Channel Thanksgiving, a direct parody of ancient aliens, mocking the channel's habit of presenting aliens as the explanation for everything, including the origins of stuffing and cranberry sauce. When South Park is doing your fact-checking, you have entered a very specific kind of rock bottom.
And what about the food? Does the appearance of stuffing at the first Thanksgiving table suggest a kind of alien technology?
That same year, the channel drops the N channel from its name entirely. It is no longer the History Channel. It is just history. Bold, capitalized, confident, as if screaming the word loudly enough would distract everyone from the fact that there was almost no actual history left on the schedule. It is the television equivalent of a restaurant removing the word food from its sign and hoping nobody notices the menu is empty. And look at what filled the void. Shows like Dual Survival, a series we covered on this channel that became one of our biggest videos ever, became the new face of history. Two men stumbling through the wilderness, drowning in staged drama and manufactured tension on a channel that once sent lesson plans to elementary schools. The original audience was already long gone. The historians, the educators, the serious viewers had all quietly packed their bags and moved to YouTube, Netflix, the Smithsonian Channel, anywhere that still took the subject seriously. What remained were viewers who wanted the feeling of learning something without the inconvenience of actually learning anything. And the channel was very good at providing exactly that. Here is the part that makes this whole story genuinely maddening.
Go there through a wormhole and through hyperspace and bang, you're there.
The History Channel did not fail. That is the actual punchline. Financially, it worked. It reached 96 million American households by 2015. The pivot to reality TV delivered the ratings and the revenue. By every metric that matters to a boardroom, the strategy was a success. Nancy DeBuck did exactly what she was hired to do. She then left in 2018 to become CEO of Vice Media. Vice Media subsequently filed for bankruptcy. But that is someone else's video. The channel that replaced her kept going.
But just who really are these otherworldly creatures called the Greys?
Kept airing The Alien Guy, kept running the pawn shop, kept scheduling truck drivers and swamp men and gold miners in prime time on a channel called History, and kept telling itself that this was fine because the numbers said so. But here's what the numbers never captured. The History Channel used to mean something. It was a channel that a teacher could point a student toward and say, "Go watch that, you will learn something real." That trust took a decade to build. It took about 3 years to spend. And once it was gone, no amount of ratings could buy it back. Because the viewers who replaced the original audience were never loyal to the channel. They were loyal to the show. And the moment the show got old, they left. Just like the serious viewers had a decade before them. Dual Survival collapsed under the weight of its own fake drama. Gold Rush is fading. Pawn Stars now pulls a fraction of its peak audience, and if you have not seen our video on that, the numbers will genuinely shock you. The casual viewers moved on the moment something shinier came along. The entertainment crowd is not a foundation, it is a wave, and waves always break. The History Channel chased the wave, caught it, rode it further than anyone expected, and ended up exactly where waves always end up, washed up on the shore wondering what happened to the ocean. If you made it this far, you already know how this works. subscribe, hit the bell, and we will see you in 3 days for the next one.